The moment my sister walked back through my mother's front door alone, I felt something cold move through my chest. Not panic. Not yet. Just a quiet, terrible knowing. I looked at the empty space beside her. The doorway where a small hand should have been swinging. The spot near her hip where Ellery always stood, because my daughter was 5 years old and she trusted everyone in that house. Where's Ellery? Kessia set her purse on the counter without looking at me. Kessia. My voice came out flat. Where is my daughter? She tilted her head, the way she always did when she wanted you to feel like the unreasonable one. Then she smiled. Not a warm smile, not even a polite one, and said the words I will never forget for the rest of my life. Oh, sorry. I must have forgotten her at the store. The room went quiet. I looked at my mother, Vivian, who was standing at the kitchen island with a dish towel over her shoulder. She met my eyes and said calmly, as if we were discussing whether to order pizza, "Don't worry. You'll find her there eventually." And then Kessia laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a guilty one. A real laugh, the kind that meant she'd been holding it in since she walked through the door. Maybe she'll learn not to steal Blythe's thunder. That was the moment I understood that nothing in that house had ever been accidental. Every cutting comment. Every comparison. Every time Ellery had been overlooked, dismissed, or made to feel like she was too much, it had always been deliberate. They had left my 5-year-old daughter alone in a department store on purpose. And they were laughing about it. What happened next? The 2 hours Ellery spent crying at a customer service desk, the call I made 3 weeks later, and the way both of their lives unraveled in a single afternoon. That is what this story is about. I need to tell you who I was before that night, because it matters. My name is Maren. I'm 32 years old. I work in insurance during the day and do bookkeeping for small businesses at night. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my daughter Ellery, a dying succulent I refuse to throw away, and a collection of mismatched coffee mugs that somehow tells the whole story of my 20s. I am not dramatic. I don't create conflict. I was raised to keep the peace, which, in my family, meant absorbing whatever Kessia and my mother needed to put down. Ellery's father, Cormac, left 2 weeks before her first birthday. He texted me from the driveway. He said he wasn't built for this. He drove away with a car full of his things and an empty apology, and I never heard from him again outside of the legal paperwork. My mother's response: "You should have seen the signs, Maren." My sister's response: "At least she's a cute kid." That was the template. That had always been the template. Kessia was 3 years younger than me and had built the life my mother had always wanted for herself. Suburban house, stable husband, a daughter named Blythe who wore matching hair ribbons and knew how to sit still during adult conversations. My mother, Vivian, worshipped that life. She talked about Blythe's dance recitals and Kessia's kitchen renovation the way some people talk about religion, with complete devotion and zero room for doubt. Ellery and I were the footnote. We were invited to dinners, yes. We were included in photos, technically. But the warmth was conditional. The moment Ellery laughed too loudly, or interrupted a conversation, or needed something that pulled attention away from Blythe, you could feel the temperature drop. I noticed it. I should have left sooner. But I kept telling myself that grandmothers and aunts were worth fighting for. That Ellery deserved to know her family. That if I just stayed patient, stayed quiet, kept showing up, things would soften. They didn't soften. They sharpened. It was a Tuesday evening in March when everything broke open. Blythe's 7th birthday was 3 days away, and my mother had organized a small family dinner to kick off what she called Blythe's birthday week. That phrase alone should have told me everything. Birthday week. For a 7-year-old. I brought Ellery anyway, because she had asked to come. Because she loved her cousin despite everything, and because I genuinely believed that a child's birthday was neutral ground. That even Vivian and Kessia could set aside their quiet cruelties for one dinner. Ellery wore her favorite yellow cardigan. She had spent 20 minutes that morning picking it out, holding it up to the window to check the color in natural light, the way she did with things she loved. The dinner started the way they always did, politely, thinly, like a veneer stretched over old damage. Vivian had cooked a full meal. There were candles on the table. Blythe sat at the head, already in birthday mode, performing for the room in the way children do when they've been taught that attention is a thing to be collected. Ellery sat beside me and ate quietly. I noticed she kept glancing at Blythe. Not with jealousy, just with the soft, open admiration that 5-year-olds have for older kids. She thought Blythe was fascinating. She always had. Midway through dinner, Kessia announced she wanted to take Blythe to the store to pick up a gift, something she'd been promising her all week. Then, before I could process what was happening, she turned to Ellery with a bright smile. "Ellery, wanna come? We'll make it a girls' trip." Ellery's face lit up. She looked at me. "Can I, Mommy?" My gut said no. I can't explain it better than that. There was something automatic and instinctive in me that wanted to say no. But I looked at Kessia's smile, at Ellery's hope, at my mother nodding approvingly from across the table, and I silenced the instinct. "Sure," I said. "Be back in an hour." Ellery hugged me around the neck before she left. She smelled like the watermelon shampoo we'd used that morning. They walked out the front door. I cleared plates, helped my mother in the kitchen, made conversation about things that didn't matter. 40 minutes passed. Then an hour. Then an hour and 15 minutes. I texted Kessia. No response. I called. It rang through to voicemail. I tried 3 more times. At the 90-minute mark, I walked back into the living room and found Kessia standing there, purse on the counter, no Ellery in sight, acting like she'd just returned from an ordinary errand. You already know what she said. I don't need to repeat it. What I need to tell you is what happened inside me in the 5 seconds after she left. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something colder and more focused. Like a door closing quietly in a room inside my chest. I felt myself step back from the version of me that still wanted to be loved by these people, and I stepped into something else entirely. I grabbed my purse and my keys. I did not say another word to either of them. I drove to the department store. I found her at the customer service desk near the front entrance. She was sitting in an orange plastic chair, the kind with the metal legs, and she was holding a stuffed dog that one of the store employees had given her. Her yellow cardigan had a smear of something on the sleeve, a chocolate sample from the candy aisle, I found out later, because a kind employee had walked her around and tried to keep her calm. She had been there for an hour and 53 minutes. When she saw me, she didn't cry right away. She slid off the chair and walked toward me, and then her face did something complicated. Relief and exhaustion and the particular sadness of a child who has spent a long time holding themselves together, and she pressed her face into my jacket and finally let go. I held her in the middle of that store for a long time. The employee who had stayed with her, a young woman named, I think, Adrienne, told me that Ellery had asked 3 times whether her aunt was coming back. Each time she had said yes less certainly. On the drive home, Ellery was quiet. "About a mile from our apartment," she said. "Kessia forgot me on purpose, didn't she?" I gripped the steering wheel. "Why do you think that?" "Because she didn't look sorry. She was smiling when she left. She was 5 years old. She saw it before I let myself see it." "I don't know, Bug," I said, because I wasn't ready yet to say yes to my 5-year-old. "But it doesn't matter why it happened. What matters is that you're safe and I came." "You always come," she said. Then she fell asleep holding the stuffed dog from the store. I bought it the next morning. I drove back and paid for it without telling her. She named it Dusty. She still has him. Neither Vivian nor Kessia called that night. Not the next morning. Not for 3 days. When my mother finally reached out, it was a text that said, "You overreacted. Ellery was fine." Kessia sent nothing. I did not respond to either of them. What I did instead was make appointments. I found a child therapist who specialized in emotional stress responses. I documented the evening in writing, times, statements, everything I remembered. I kept every ignored call in my phone log. I requested the store's customer service records showing when Ellery had been brought to the desk and when I had picked her up. I did not know yet exactly what I was building, but I knew I was building something. For 3 weeks, I stayed quiet. My mother escalated, first to gentle nudges, then to longer texts, then to a call from my aunt asking if I could please just talk to Vivian because the tension was affecting the whole family. Kessia sent Ellery a birthday card. Ellery's birthday was in April, with a $20 bill inside, as if money could close the distance between what she'd done and what she wanted things to look like now. I deposited the 20 into Ellery's savings account. I did not send a thank you card. 3 weeks after the incident, My mother sent a letter. I read it once. It asked me to fix what I had destroyed. There was no apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened to Ellery. Just an expectation that I would smooth things over because I always had before. I burned it over the kitchen sink. Then I made the call. Here is something people don't know about me. I spent 4 years at an insurance company learning exactly how institutions document risk. I know what a paper trail looks like. I know what it means when records align. And I had spent those 3 quiet weeks making sure that mine were airtight. The first call I made was to the department store's corporate customer service line. I explained what had happened, referenced the customer service report from that evening, and asked whether the store had any protocol around incidents where a minor had been brought to the desk under those circumstances. They informed me that there was a formal record, and that the associate who had stayed with Ellery had filed a written account of the interaction. That record would matter later. The second call was to my attorney. I want to be clear, I am not a litigious person. I had never been in a courtroom in my life outside of Cormac's custody case, which never even went before a judge because he didn't contest anything. But I had an attorney because every single parent with a small business on the side should have one, and I had retained her 2 years prior for a contract dispute that ended before it began. Her name was Denise. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said 3 things. First, what Kessia had done met the legal threshold for child endangerment in our state. Second, Vivian's explicit statement, "You'll find her there eventually," established that the act was not accidental and that another adult had prior knowledge. Third, I had the right to formalize a protective order restricting Kessia's contact with Ellery and to pursue civil action for the documented emotional distress. I told her I wanted all 3. The formal notice arrived at Kessia's home on a Thursday. I know because she called me 40 minutes after it was delivered, the first time she had called me since the incident. Her voice was high and tight in a way I had never heard before. "Maren, what is this?" "It's exactly what it says it is." "You're serious?" "I've been serious since the moment I found my daughter sitting alone in an orange plastic chair for 2 hours. There was a long pause. "Mom is going to." "I know. This is going to affect my whole family." "I know." "Maren, I didn't think she'd actually." "Stop." I kept my voice even. "Don't say you didn't think. You thought. You planned. You laughed. Ellery told me you were smiling when you walked out of that store without her. A 5-year-old saw it, Kessia. Don't tell me you didn't think." She started to cry then. "And I want to be honest with you. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not cruelty, not guilt. Just a kind of clear, settled stillness." "I have to go," I said. I hung up. What I did not know at the time, what I found out over the following weeks, was that Kessia's husband, a methodical private man named Theodore, had not known what she had done. She had told him the dinner had ended in an argument. She had not told him about the store. When the formal notice arrived and outlined the incident in legal language, Theodore read every word. He called Denise's office to clarify the timeline. Then he came home and asked Kessia to explain it herself. She couldn't. Theodore had a daughter. He loved Blythe with the specific, protective fierceness of a father who had planned his whole life around keeping her safe. The idea that his wife had deliberately left another child, a 5-year-old, alone in a public place for 2 hours and had then laughed about it, was not something he could contextualize into anything forgivable. He moved out 3 weeks later. I did not celebrate that. I'm telling you because it happened, and because the story isn't complete without it. I did not set out to end Kessia's marriage. I set out to protect my daughter. The consequences that followed belonged to the choices Kessia had already made. Vivian's unraveling was quieter, but, in some ways, more complete. My mother had spent 30 years building her social identity around her family, her church group, her neighborhood circle. The image of the warm, generous matriarch with 2 successful daughters and beautiful grandchildren. When the people around her began to learn, gradually, through the kinds of conversations that happen in places like church parking lots and grocery store aisles, that her younger daughter had left a 5-year-old alone in a store while laughing about it, and that her elder daughter had documented it and pursued legal action, that image developed cracks. No one said anything to her face. But invitations stopped arriving. The church committee she had chaired for 11 years asked her, gently, to step back while things settled. Her neighbor, who had been her closest friend for over a decade, stopped coming by for coffee. Vivian had always believed that family reputation was armor. She discovered, slowly and painfully, that it could also be evidence. 4 months after the incident, I sent my mother a letter of my own. Not angry, not vindictive, just clear. I told her that I had spent years believing that enduring her favoritism and Cassia's cruelty was the price of giving Ellery a family, that I had absorbed dismissal after dismissal because I thought love was something you had to earn back over and over from people who were supposed to give it freely. I told her that Ellery had asked me at 5 years old whether she was a bad girl because she talked too much. I told her that was the sentence I came back to whenever I questioned whether I had done the right thing. I told her that I did not hate her. I told her I hoped she had time left to understand the difference between a family she had built and a performance she had maintained. I did not ask for a response. I did not leave a return address. 3 months have passed since I sent that letter. Ellery is doing well. She goes to therapy every other Tuesday and comes home and tells me about the games she played and the things she drew. She still colors pictures of houses, but lately she's been drawing people outside them. Standing in yards, walking down streets, figures with their arms open. Her therapist says that's a good sign. She still has Dusty, the stuffed dog from the store. He sits on her pillow every morning and gets packed into her backpack on the days she says she might need extra comfort. She doesn't ask about Cassia or Vivian. Once about 6 weeks ago, she asked me if Grandma Vivian loved us. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I think she loved the idea of us, I said. The real us was more than she knew how to handle. Ellery thought about that. That's sad for her, she said. I nodded. Yeah, Bug. It is. I'm not going to tell you that everything is easy now. That we skip through sunlit days without anything hard following us. Ellery still has moments, a look she gets sometimes in busy public spaces, a stillness that comes over her when I step out of a room unexpectedly, that remind me of what that evening cost her. We are working through it. Slowly, together, one Tuesday therapy session and one bedtime conversation at a time. What I will tell you is this. The version of me that stood in my mother's kitchen burning that letter, she was not someone built for dramatic gestures. She was someone who had been quiet for too long and finally understood that staying quiet was its own kind of choice. Protecting Ellery was not a decision I agonized over. It was the only decision that existed. There is a particular kind of cruelty in using a child to punish her mother. In looking at a 5-year-old who has done nothing except exist and deciding that she is a threat to your daughter's spotlight. Cassia and Vivian understood something about power, that the most effective way to reach me was through Ellery. What they failed to understand is that it works in both directions. The moment they touched my daughter, they handed me something I had never had before in that family. Clarity. I knew exactly who they were. I knew exactly what I had to do. And I did it without doubt, without hesitation, and without a single backward glance. My mother's letter asked me to fix what I destroyed. I want to answer that now, clearly, for anyone who has ever received a letter like that from a person who hurt them. I didn't destroy anything. I documented what was already broken. And then I stopped standing in front of it, pretending it was whole. If you are sitting somewhere right now, in a parked car, in a break room, lying in your bed at night, and you are protecting someone who keeps asking you to forgive people who are still causing harm, I want you to hear this. Forgiveness is for you to decide on your own terms, in your own time, if it ever serves you. It is not owed to anyone who has not first made it safe to give. Ellery made me a pancake last Sunday. She put 4 blueberries on top arranged in a smiley face because, she said, that's what happy pancakes look like, Mommy. That is what we built out of everything they left us with. A 2-bedroom apartment, a dying succulent, a stuffed dog named Dusty, and happy pancakes on Sunday mornings. It is more than enough. It is everything. So let me ask you something. If your own family chose someone else's comfort over your child's safety, would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have made the call?